For the last 4 years, I have been working in cargo industry. I was working as product owner of an application to help the airlines to send custom declaration for their airway bills or for their flight. So before a flight of cargo can land in an airport in a country, the airlines will need to send to the custom authority of this arrival country something called custom declaration, which include all the basic information about the goods on the flight. For example, whether it is clothes, fresh meat, or flowers, how big it is, how weight it is, and who is the sender and who is the receiver, all such kind of information, so that the custom authority can use those information, run their risk analysis, and decide if there are any risks of terrorists, for example, if these goods are forbidden goods, before they send a confirmation or acceptance for the goods to enter their country. Now the tricky part is that every country wants to enhance their security checking, especially for the air industry. So they want the airlines to send the custom declaration as soon as possible. And at least they have to send those information before the time of arrival. What happens if the airlines fail to comply with this rule? They will get penalty. They will have to pay custom fines for being late of declaration. Their goods cannot enter the country, so they have to pay additional fee for the warehouse to store the goods in the airport, waiting for the custom declaration to be sent and got acceptance so that the good can enter the country. They also risk to lose all the value of the goods if it is fresh meat or fish, for example. If the goods has to wait in the airport 1 or 2 days, probably the fish will be bad. That is the financial cost. And there will be some intangible costs associated with this as well. For example, the airlines probably have to send somebody, go to the airport in person, and do manual custom declaration in paper. So in the end, there will be additional work from multiple parties like airlines, customs, and from us as software vendor. And not to mention that probably there will be frustration, stresses caused by this latency. So obviously, latency in custom declaration is very costly in terms of money, time, and resources. The airline could easily pay hundreds of thousands euros in fines. That's why, as somebody have witnessed a lot of airlines struggling every single day for the last 4 years to be able to send custom declaration on time, I believe that if we can manage to prevent this latency, we're going to bring out a lot of benefits for multiple parties in this cargo industry. Myself, in the last 4 years, has spent a lot of time trying to figure out the root cause of all this latency. So the reason vary from airlines to airlines, from custom to custom. Some airlines always miss information about zip code in their receiver address, which is a required set of data for German customs. Other airlines, on one particular day, they provide a wrong currency or they miss information about the weight of the airway bill. Some other day it could be technical problem from airline side, or other day it would be problem from the customs side. So it's getting harder and harder for a human being to analyzing all this set of data and then to generalize it and to make assumption or a conclusion about the root cause of all this. And now that I take this course about machine machine learning. If we can find a machine learning model to be able to predict this latency probably one day in advance or just few hours in advance based on the data that we have so far, so that we can send warning to the airlines to make them pay more attention on this particular airways bill or this flight so that we can avoid this latency. That gonna help a lot. So this gonna answer for the question whether this problem is worth to be solved and whether anybody care about this or not. Just to be clear, what I'm trying to solve here is to find a machine learning model to predict which airway bill or at least which flight from the airlines will be late for custom declaration today. Now the next question that I'm trying to answer is whether machine learning will be able to solve this problem. That is a good question. But I do believe that we have hope. Based on all the historical data, we can look at it, the features which impact this latency the most. And from there, we could predict the latency. What I did is that I take a look at all the data available. I look at all the features data which related to this particular airway bill and this flight on this particular day, and try to figure out what went wrong and which features data lead to this latency. I did it myself manually, and I'm sure that we can find a machine learning model which can do this better and faster than myself. While it's very difficult to specify what we can expect from here, but from what I understand, a lot of latency is coming from data quality problem. It means that the input data is missing information. So maybe somehow the machine learning model generalize what kind of missing problem and can give us some pattern of missing data. And from there, have to predict when this problem can happen or where this problem can happen. So the target user is a software vendor such as my previous company or the airlines who want to know which airway bill or which flight are most likely to be late in custom declaration so that they can take action in advance. The problem here is that the airlines need to know 1 day or few hours in advance which airway bill or which flight tends to be late for custom declaration, and then the reason why, so that they can take action to fix the problem. Why does it matter? As I explained before, if the custom declaration is late, the airlines will have to pay custom fines, or they risk to lose the value of the goods, or at least additional waiting time or fee or resource will be the price to pay. Currently, to deal with this problem, the software vendors or the airlines analyze the root cause and propose recommendation manually. The expected impact is that this machine model can help to avoid latency and rejection in custom declaration for the airlines. The outcome metric could be number of the airway bill late or rejected in custom declaration. And metric output is the potential reason for being late or rejected, number of warnings standing out, number of action taken. The target outcome is custom declaration latency or rejection reduced by 50%. The target output is latency and rejection prediction with a classified reason are correct 90%. Constraint. Prediction must be 1 day in advance the deadline of custom declaration. The factors which could impact the latency would be the time the data about the airway bill or the flight will be received compared with the deadline of custom declaration. For example, some customs say that the airlines had to send the custom declaration at the time of departure. So then there's some airlines have all the information available 4 hours before this deadline or 1 day before. The second factor is the type of missing data detected after initial system validation. So when the airlines send the data to the software vendor, the vendor will do a system validation against the data to detect the basic data quality problem. For example, missing zip code, missing consignee address. The other factors are important is airway bill data. For example, which airlines will carry this airway bill? Where does this come from? And where this airway bill will go? For example, Turkish Airlines will send the flight from Istanbul to Amsterdam. And the flight information also very important. For example, departure time and arrival time. Machine learning solution, as I explained before, we could use machine learning model to predict whether this particular airway bill or flight will be late in customs declarations. For example, based on historical data, when airlines always provide missing data about consignee information, which leads to late report to Netherlands customs. However, the problem only happened with the flight departed from Istanbul to Amsterdam on every Thursday. So based on this information, the machine learning model, when it see a flight or airway bill from Istanbul to Amsterdam on a Thursday, it will mark this flight or airway bill as likely to be late, with the reason missing consignee data. The other thing that machine learning model could do here is to provide a root cause analysis. So in the example above, machine learning model could easily point out that the reason is predict this airway bill is late because in the past, all the flight on Thursday from Istanbul to Amsterdam is late because of consignee data missing. So with this information in hand, the airlines could dig deeper to see who is in charge of sending data for the flight from Istanbul to Amsterdam every Thursday. And if there's a problem with the data providing from this organization, they could address this organization and request for a change in the data feeding so that the data will not miss information about consignee. So the machine learning model or data should be put on the cloud because the historical data is very big. The learning should be offline and should be done every week or every day. There's no need to train the model online. However, with the prediction, it should be both batch and online prediction. So normally, the prediction should be done 1 time per day for all the flight of the coming day, of the next day. However, there are airlines which send data very late, so they should be able to trigger the prediction as soon as they have the data available. The potential risks for this is that to validate the machine learning model is another challenge in this project. So first, let's talk about the planning. The easy way to do this project is using Agile with multiple iteration. And the first iteration could be done with one specific airline for one specific country. For example, first iteration could be building and test machine learning model for all the flights from airlines X going to the US. And then the second iteration could be build and test machine learning model for all the flights from airline X going to Netherlands. How do we validate the solution? The challenge of this project is that once the machine learning model generates the prediction on which flight or which airway bill will be late or rejected, the software vendor or the airlines will use this information to take action in advance to prevent the latency and rejection to happen, with the expectation that in the end, this flight or airway bill will not be late or will not be rejected. So in the end, if we compare the prediction with the final result, the final actual result, there might be a huge gap because action has been taken and the airway bill and the flight is not at risk anymore after the action. So the best way to validate the model is to compare the predicted reason for the latency or rejection with the real-time data at that moment. For example, if the machine learning model predicts that the custom declaration for the flight from Istanbul going to Amsterdam on Thursday will most likely be late or rejected by the custom for a reason that the consignee information is missing. The best way to validate whether this prediction is correct or not is to go back to the data and check whether the information about the consignee is missing or not. That would be the best way to evaluate the accuracy of the machine learning model. The airlines probably send the data very late, just few minutes before the deadline. The other risk is that the data drift. So the name of the feature data could be vary from country to country because of the language difference. For example, some country will refer to the zip code as postcode. Zip code and postcode in German language is different from Spanish.